Just Breathe Live is a YouTube live stream where youth ministry has a say. Explore faith, spirituality, and life purpose as never before. And above all, bring your authentic self and just breathe.
All right, welcome everyone. This is Shannon Harper, and this is Just Breathe Live. I am all alone today, unfortunately. Well, I'm not completely alone. I'm going to introduce you to our guests in a moment. But Eric Bliss, my partner in crime and podcasting, is not with me, unfortunately. He is enjoying a fantastic sabbatical. He's at the very beginning of it, and I am wishing him all of the good vibes and happiness and joy that comes with not having to work for 3 months. Unfortunately, you are stuck with me for the next 3 months, and I'm going to be having some other guest hosts on Just Breathe Live, but today you have just me. And I am happy and excited to introduce to you our guests. Our guests are coming to you all the way from the other side of the ocean, from Britain. And is it Great Britain or Britain? We'll talk about that in a moment when I introduce the guests, because I don't know anything about this. This is so fantastic. We have joining us, let's see, Aly Champion. Is that right?
That's me. Hello.
Okay. Hey, Aly.
Hello.
You know what? I'm going to read your bio so everybody knows what you said about yourself, and we'll see. We'll go from there. So Aly says they're a member and founder of Bad Coffee Club. Ooh, who likes bad coffee? I don't know. I need to know more about that. A supportive online Unitarian group created to foster connection during the pandemic. Aly is an electronic engineering student from East Anglia. Anglia? Is that right? All right. And grew up attending Unitarian youth activities both in the US and the UK. These communities shaped their approach to spirituality and gave them space to grow without any pressure. Their goal is to give other kids the same supportive environment that they enjoyed. Welcome, Aly, Bad Coffee Club. All right, and then we have Zac Baker. Zac is a member of the #Blessed youth group from, now I'm not going to pronounce that right, so let me have it, Zac. What is it?
It's Gethlyon in South Wales.
Gelionin. Ooh, that's lovely. Okay. Having studied biochemistry and genetics at Swansea University. Sorry, everybody. I did not practice this ahead of time. I apologize. He became a member of the Swansea Unitarians and began providing services as a layperson. Now, having relocated to Cardiff, I recognize that name. With his partner, he continues to support the Swansea congregation and others in the local area at the pulpit, and in his role as a committee member for both the South East Wales District and Unitarians Wales. His focus is on providing an inclusive and open-minded approach to inviting each individual to meet their spiritual needs in a diverse and supportive community. Since joining #Blessed, he has been fortunate enough to work with them on a range of environmental, social, and community projects, and look forward to participating in the many more they have planned. Welcome, Zac. And finally, last but not least, we have Gavin Howell. Gav is the safeguarding lead and youth facilitator for the Unitarians. In a nutshell, Gav makes space which meets needs. He works in collaboration with a range of groups to co-create safe and enabling spaces for all. His background is in education, with nurture being his specialism. Originally from, what is it, CO? Is it?
So CO is an abbreviation for county, so County Down.
Okay, I'm going to go with that. What you said. He spent 13 years in Norwich before moving to Torbay in February to take on additional role exploring more emergent ways of working. Since being here, he's enjoyed swimming in the bay, chilling with his fellow Torbayans, and indulging in the occasional cream tea. I like cream tea. Most of all, he values moments of play, spontaneity, and occasional bouts of rascality. That's a word we don't use very often here in the US. Rascality, is that a thing? Or is that just
I think that's a Gav thing, I'll be honest. Yeah.
It's really too bad Bliss is not here, because Bliss and Gav would probably bond over things that are just theirs. I understand.
I would imagine so. I would imagine so.
All right, well,
I'm feeling the need for Eric right now. Me joking.
And he's going to be listening to this and going, "Oh man, we could have totally jived together." I know. I can feel it. But okay, so welcome. Tell me about what you all do. Like, so as a Unitarian Universalist, first of all, recognizing that you are not Unitarian Universalists per se, you identify as Unitarians. But what all do you do over there in the what is it, like, the British Isles, what's the exotic ways to describe the places that you're from?
There are far too many ways to describe them, depending on how grumpy you are at the moment. I feel like there's just plenty of them. But British Isles, I think, works.
Okay.
Got to be inclusive to Wales as well, though. So anything but England, right?
Right. I know not to say that. Yeah.
There you go. Sorted. Well, I suppose I can start off by explaining what Bad Coffee Club is. Right off the starting line, we have the intrigue of the name, which has been spotted. So Bad Coffee Club, just for the name, it all came about because we are rather notorious for our terrible coffee at any Unitarian. Of course, this is a subjective thing. I'm sure bad coffee to one person is very good coffee to someone else. I don't want to tread on anyone's toes. However, in the minds of our founders, a universal sharing of bad coffee is something that we appreciate. And we're trying to think of things that unite us, and that is definitely one of them. So Bad Coffee Club was started back during lockdown. I wish I could give you the date or the month. I'm not even sure, but it must be a couple years now, right? Yeah.
It is, yeah. So you
Goodness,
came
that's
into
crazy.
being, you came into being in May 2020. Yeah.
There you go. So it was sort of birthed out of just a sort of a very happy coincidence. Me and the other two hosts happened to, or hosts or founders, whatever you want to call it, happened to contact Gav separately, I believe. And we're all trying to, see if there's anything that we could get involved with online in terms of Unitarian activities, because we had all really appreciated the in-person ones that we had access to before. And it was really sad to not have, in particular, the youth meetups at the Nightingale Centre, which was like something that was really, as I said, formative to me as a Unitarian, and I really appreciated it. So Tom and Theo, the two other founders, we all sort of just messaged, emailed Gav and got in contact to see if there was anything we could do. And Gav was like, "Oh, well, here we go. You've got other people who are interested." And from that, we worked together, figuring out what our sort of our like objective was for this, and to try and create a community online. And that's exactly what we did. So we came up with a structure that worked for us, and we sort of ran with that. So Bad Coffee Club is predominantly like a sort of a connection, a place for connections, a place to meet new people, and just a safe space to feel, heard, and to feel, some sense of fun. And that's, I think, probably the biggest thing is fun. We do a lot of games. We have a bunch of online games that we'll play together, all with the goal of trying to get that connection, especially when we really needed connection over lockdown. So I think that's, in a nutshell, what Bad Coffee Club has been. But of course, Gav will fill you in on any of the important bits that I've missed. But yeah, sorry for the monologue, but that is from start to finish, I think Bad Coffee Club and where it's at now.
No, thank you. Yes.
And then I guess I can go next. It's a bit more difficult because I'm not a founding member of #Blessed, so I don't know the whole history including all the details of how it started, but essentially, Get Leon in Chapel is kind of where it came out of. So I'm not going to make you try and say it again. I know. I realize now, as a Welsh person, you're not going to be able to pronounce it. So yeah. But it's kind of come out of, it's a bit of a younger, not a younger congregation. It's an old chapel, but it's a very community-based congregation, and there's a lot of families that go, and it's got a lot more young people than most of the chapels in our area. So it sort of came out of them wanting to get together and do some like community projects, and then took on a bit more of the like social action, and then more and more people joined, and now we've got people like me who aren't in the immediate area, and then even further afield. So we've met some more people, and now we all join remotely. So yeah, essentially they like to focus on community projects with their physical chapel building and the congregation, but then it's gone from like cleanups of like fly tipped rubbish nearby, or like litter picking on the beach, and then they do like fundraising for they did one recently that was for sanitary products for people who don't have access to them. And then more and more things. We've done book drops recently where we've had secondhand books, and we've left them around for people to just take with a note. So we could we're trying to branch out and do things that are a bit more accessible to people if we're not all in the same area at the same time. So yeah, and then again, they've been kind of going for a few years now. So I joined kind of like this year, beginning of this year. I've been adjacent to them, but I've not been in the group, and now I'm part of it as well. So yeah, it's really good. I mean, most of the people are a bit younger than me, but they're really driven, and it's been really nice to be part of something that's not just my church congregation, but also get to live more of the Unitarian lifestyle, as it were, and getting involved in all these different things. So yeah, I think that's it really for #Blessed.
Wow. And so this is a physical church, but you also have like remote access to it, like you're doing things online as well, or is it?
Yeah, it started out of the physical church's congregation, like the young people in that congregation, and then as we've accumulated more people who do live further away, then we've sort of moved to remote, but we do things still at the church as well. So yeah, it's become a bit of a mix.
Awesome. Wonderful. Gav, do you have anything you want to add about?
Gosh, I'm very fortunate, Shannon, in that I have the privilege really of working with both these groups and indeed other Unitarians really since the pandemic, in terms of supporting them to develop youth forms of youth ministry which really resonate with them, which very much put them very much in the architect's seat in terms of them designing forms of ministry, however understood by them, which meet their needs. And as you can see, we're very lucky. We've got two of them today on the podcast, and they're doing tremendous things in terms of their own little youth groups, and also tremendous things in terms of their wider community. And my role, again, a very fortunate one, is that I try to do my bit in a way that's supportive to help them to do their thing as best they can. So yeah, it's not a bad gig.
No, I know it's a pretty great gig. So for those of you listening or watching, Gav and we realize that, I mean, in a lot of ways we have a similar role. And I love to find similarities between like what we're doing here in the United States and what you're doing, over there. Like Aly, when you're talking about Bad Coffee Club, it reminds me a lot of, we have a group called YUP. It's the Young Unitarian Universalist Project. But it was similar. It was a very similar inception. Like myself and another person who worked in the youth office, Jenica Davis Hockett, we were like, hey, we really want to connect with some young people, and we want to see what they want right now. And so we gathered a whole bunch of high schoolers and people who had just bridged in that weird 2020 year when I don't we can talk a little bit about what bridging means over there for you, but like here in for those people that didn't really get that bridging because it would have happened in the spring of 2020, it was really hard to like move on. Anyways, we met with them and they were like, yeah, we want to form a group that meets online. We want to connect. We want to play games and do the things that as much as we can online that we would have been doing in person. And so that group is formed and is still meeting. They just had a great meeting where they generated this wasn't the most recent meeting, but they recently generated some great check-in questions. They worked on some Mad Libs. Do y'all play Mad Libs? Is that Mad Libs? Okay, well, that's a whole nother lesson that I could teach, but we don't need to go there right now, but it's a game that we like to play here. Anyways, I see a lot of correlation there. And then Zac, you're talking about #blessed. We have some congregations that are really working are really organized by a younger crowd or younger people. And what we found during the pandemic is that there were people who wanted to like zoom in and are still zooming into those congregations and being connected in that way, and then also being connected in their community. So I think it's beautiful to see that Unitarian value, we call it UU values, but those values that we all hold, like they stand up, right? No matter what country you're in, like we're all looking for the same things, those connections and community connections. I love it. I love it. Love it. So let's see. I'm going to jump into the questions that Bliss and I kind of talked about. So we might go in other directions too, but there were some really good ones that we wanted to ask you about. So we were wondering about UU worship. So UU worships in the United States, sometimes the traditional worship is like young people don't always feel as connected to them. And so I'm wondering what worship looks like for young people in the over there. Why do I keep saying over there? Because I can't think of like one country that's like right, but where you are, what does worship look like for young people there? What are you drawn to?
I mean, for me, I think the biggest thing to point out is that it's really quite diverse. I've been a member of like several different congregations around. I've also been a member of a congregation in California, so I've had a bit of a taste of different ones, and I've just realized just how varied it is. And from place to place, it obviously will vary with the age of members, with the sort of approach to worship. So I definitely, of course, speaking for myself, I don't think I could sum up what Unitarianism looks like as a whole in the UK, because honestly, it's so varied. And I think that's one of the really cool things of having Bad Coffee Club that I found is it's sort of in a lot of ways an online congregation, and it's very decentralized. So you can sort of get these elements of everyone's different congregations and what that means to them, which for me is a like the main thing that I take away from Unitarianism is what is your path and what is your approach. So having that individuality and being able to bring that all together in a single place is really cool. But for me, I've not been associated with one particular congregation or attended one particular congregation steadily, just purely because of the geography of it. I've been part of a couple ones in Cambridge and London. But for me, the biggest sort of meeting place for Unitarian community was one we had these youth weekends over up north in the Peak District, beautiful setting, and we'd rent out this place called the Nightingale Centre, and it would be a weekend of Unitarian youth activities, and that's when I felt the most connected to, a place and a congregation, but it wasn't a congregation, it was just a smattering of everyone, and I think that's something I really kick out of.
In the US, they call those kind of like weekend gatherings cons, or short for conference. Some in the South, they call them rallies, but yeah, that's also a common thing. There's something about like staying overnight, like having a sleepover with people, and like, like and like living with people for like 48 hours that makes you bonded. That's awesome. Zach, what about you?
Yeah, it's a bit of a different experience, I guess, for me because I wasn't a young Unitarian as a child. I joined the Unitarians on my own as an adult. So it's it's a difficult sort of thing to see because for me, where I am, it is quite a traditional setup still, I think, in Wales primarily. I mean, my church is technically a city church, but still it's not like ones in London, which are far more modern, you know. We still have hymns and we have pews. It's very like it's an old one. And then further into some of the more rural communities, they're even more traditional. So I think in terms of youth congregations, it's not so much that they have a thing, apart from I guess Gethlyon, where they have a lot of youth led services and they have quite a young minister. So it's more like you kind of go because your grandparents or your parents are going to the church. I'm probably an exception to the rule of younger people just going of their own volition. So I think for me, it's I mean, I guess like Ali said, it's still quite diverse, but yeah, it's still quite traditional for us. So I don't think there's been a very big shift in how it's worked for the last few hundred years in Wales. So, which is nice in a way because we've still got, you kind of know everybody and you know all the other congregations in the area and a little further afield, but then it's not as maybe modern and up to date as maybe some of the English congregations would be because they're, bigger and places like London just have a lot more people coming in and sort of changing how things work.
Yes. Well, and as you're talking, I'm realizing that, I'm asking you a question about, worship and what young people are attracted to, and asking you to compare it to what, is normally happening in your congregations. And I actually don't know what what does a traditional worship service look like? You know what I mean? In Wales versus England versus, like, I don't actually even know. So it's like it's interesting because I wonder, have either of you visited the United States and gone to a church in the United States? Because I you know what I mean, I don't actually know the differences.
Yeah, so I have visited one. I was very young. I moved here when I was 4, but I do actually, weirdly enough, remember bits of it, and I've gone back and visited again, and also visited after I had experienced some of the Unitarian youth stuff in the UK. So I did have that comparison, and it's something that I my parents always have sort of the skills that they go on to try and explain, the terminology and everything what that means to them. But I've always really not differentiated it much. I think the reality is it means something different to everyone. But for me, the sort of worship, the congregations, the whole premise has been extremely similar. Or at least I guess that's part of that is self-selected. Like I go to the congregations that work for me, and there is, as I said before, a huge variation in what that looks like. But the ones that I've been to and I've attended have had very similar sort of styles of worship of incorporating like a sense of I guess not ritual feels like a scary word, but sort of having routines and having sort of structure to a community, which I think is something that I've found really really valuable. And in that sense, I would say very very similar. What I've experienced in both places, I would not be able to pick out any massive differences. No.
And I guess that's, it's always the case that from even one congregation to the next in the United States, they will have very, very different experiences. In fact, I always say, if you went to a UU church and you didn't like it, well, make sure you go back again another week, because it might be completely different that week. And if that still doesn't work, try another church, because it could be completely, completely different. I imagine it's the same way over there. Um, so, okay, let's see. Oh, okay. So this is interesting. When you all are meeting, I'm interested in like what you're doing online. You said games, you said activities. You also said you're connecting. Zac, you talked about like connecting people with community projects and things like that. So we're really interested in like how are you connecting? When you can't always be in person, and now it's like at the point where we're separated enough that yeah, it's just not possible. So how are you connecting over Zoom? What you doing?
Well, I think it started off, like I said, quite local. It was a bit easier, and now we are trying to come up with community projects. Can be quite hard when you're not all in necessarily the same actual physical community. So I think, like we said before, some of the environmental stuff we've been doing, like the litter picking, beach cleans, you can kind of do that on your own. So we will like arrange a date, and then some of the people who live near the chapel will go and do it there. Some of the members who live further out will just go in their own sort of place. The book drop was a really good one, because obviously we can sort of do that anywhere. We have been trying to think of some more. um, we are currently looking at something for Christmas with arranging some parcels. There's shoebox appeals. I'm not sure if you have them in the US. So you fill a shoebox with things for people who kind of need them. So we used to do like toys for children and then send them abroad, or like toiletries, necessities, food we might be looking at this year. So we're kind of trying to come up with ways to do that. Obviously, fundraising things are usually fairly easy to do remotely. So yeah, we're trying to do that, and a mix of socializing with each other as well. So it's not all work. Not that we don't enjoy the projects, but yeah, this is the thing. There's just so many different things that we are trying to do that it is hard to come up with them all off the top of my head. The things that they have done, there's lists and lists before I even joined. So yeah, they are getting steadily more ambitious as we sort of our area of influence spreads over the country. So yeah.
Wonderful.
Yeah, and in terms of so for us, I remember when we met, we got in contact with Blessed for the first time, and that was super exciting to see. Oh, there's other people doing, this sort of community, having a community, and they're also reaching out online, and it was a really awesome experience. And I remember just thinking, oh my goodness, they have done so many things. That is crazy. Like, you are the organization of getting all of these sort of projects going, is something that we had managed to come up with a completely different group that had completely different goals. But from the surface, you'd be like, oh, of course, two Unitarian youth groups, they must be similar. But like, just between the two of us, you know, how much diversity and what we've been able to achieve, I think, is really cool. But for us, I feel like going after Zac is a bit difficult, because we haven't got all these really magnanimous projects, but I guess in a lot of ways we do, because we have a sense of community, which has been so valuable over lockdown. And I've seen it's been really awesome to see the growth of our members over this time. And I guess, actually, to be honest, I think the best way of sort of explaining the mood of our club is to just quickly give you the intro spiel of the club. So we spent a long time sort of perfecting this and trying to sort of capture our essence. So I feel like it's a pretty good thing to say, which is welcome. This is Bad Coffee Club, a light-hearted yet supportive space for us to meet, relax, and form lasting friendships. A space, built on mutual respect, kindness, and is a desire to live life to the full.
Beautiful.
And I feel like instead of me botching up words, that kind of really captures what we are all about, and it's something that we were looking at for a long time. So we're thinking about what sort of things can we do online to get a sense of connection. It's hard to do that, right? It's hard to manufacture a sense of connection, especially online, and as we all know. But between the three of us, we had a really keen sort of sense, and I guess also a quite a valuable natural ability to sort of, I guess, banter, I guess, sort of have fun and keep it lighthearted, and open up conversations. Like I really like sort of trying to, I really like trying to figure out ways of fostering that, which is harder than you think. But what we do fundamentally, what we arrived on, is doing sets of various different online games. We do a lot of sort of Pictionary type things. We use something called Jackbox games.
And of that here too.
Which is we do a lot of that. And we sort of bookend this with a check-in and a check-out, where people can share how they're feeling, and what they're looking forward to, and any joys and concerns, really. And it's actually quite surprising how it's so easy to talk to people. You can spend a lot of time with someone, and not actually properly like, oh, how are you doing today? What's going on? How are you feeling? And also I think people struggle with being genuine. When someone's, oh, how are you doing? How have you been? Then it's hard to be like, oh, actually I've not been so good. And I think because we have this format of having these sort of uplifting games in the middle, it's allowed people to just have that sort of, I guess, escape from communicating with people in person, and it's just a different setting, which I think is also really important. Like, as you can see, I'm very passionate about this. I think it's hard to convey just what it's like, but I hope you can sort of get a sense of what we've been trying to do. But fundamentally, I guess, in answer to your question, we play games online and we have fun. And we all have a laugh, and we managed to get Gav to giggle quite a bit, which is, that's the important thing. We succeed. So, yeah.
Yes, I would say, rather than succeed, I would say you excel in that department in terms of giving me a giggle. Definitely. I suppose from my perspective, looking through a slightly different window in terms of what are we doing online, I suppose the honest answer, Shannon, from my perspective, is we're still figuring it out. We're still figuring it out. We're mindful that this is very early days in terms of, we have this technology, I suppose, which we've had for a while in the form of Zoom and other video conferencing softwares. But really, it's only within the past 2 years that we've started using it.
Yeah.
And not only are we trying to get to grips with it and understand its potential, but we're also trying to think about, well, not only what is the potential of this technology, but also how do we use it well? How do we use it well so that we are enabling people to bring their whole best selves to a space?
Yeah.
And I think, if honest, I feel like we're very much in that early exploratory stage.
Mm-hmm.
We're having a go. We're trying things. I think the thing that I find that really works in this investigative stage that we're in is those rich conversations. Let's make a space. Let's make it as best we can, and let's have a conversation, and let's see what emerges from that conversation. Mm-hmm. And we'll go with whatever emerges, whatever surfaces in that time together. But I think, to me, I'm quite excited by the online space. I think of, there's no way that, for instance, a number of Unitarians, certainly in the UK, given that we are small in number
Mhm.
and very thinly spread, it does provide a platform for those who are in isolated areas across the UK to meet in a space and to start to, in a way that both Ali and Zac have very eloquently put across, to form community, to make community. And the fact that we're even having this conversation now with our good friends in the US um, goes to show the potential of the technology. And I have the pleasure of working alongside some of your other colleagues in the UEA in making an international space for participants from Canada, the US, the UK, the Czech Republic, and indeed we have someone who comes in from or tunes in from Paris as well. And again, these are opportunities which they were inconceivable about 5 years ago. Certainly 2 years ago, at the start of the pandemic, we wouldn't have thought that making space to allow for those rich connections on a global scale, and on a global scale on a regular basis. That's the big thing. We're doing this regularly. And I'm very excited as to what will come of this. So, for instance, it's been great to hear that the other week, well, not the other week, but the other month, I should say, it was great to hear members of #Bless going off on their own trip that they planned for themselves. They went to Rome. How fabulous, and that's where the online space has been used as a catalyst to the in-person. And it's great also to see members of Bad Coffee Club, again, starting with the online space, now going about planning their own residential meetup in Sheffield, hopefully later in the year, later next year, I should say. So using the online as a catalyst for the in-person meetup and seeing how the two dance together. What's that dance between the in-person and the online space, and how do they synergize and ultimately create new and exciting and innovative forms of ministry? So I suppose, let's see what happens from all of this. It feels very exciting. It's still early days, but I'm optimistic to see what happens in these online spaces. Very optimistic. It'll be cool.
Yeah, I mean, I love when you're talking about. Essentially, we were all experimenting. I feel like we were kind of forced into the experiment. The pandemic forced us into like really thinking and using the technology that was already there, and then technology started catching up. I noticed, started catching up, and so we tried so many different things. I don't know if you all tried different things. I mean, there was like so many different platforms that were like saying, "Oh, this is a great way to connect." And in the beginning, it felt like so many of those platforms were really designed for corporations, for corporate, in meetups, and even Zoom. Like that was the big complaint about Zoom in the beginning. I think it's gotten better, but we tried all kinds. I know Bliss really experimented with like this little thing where you had a little avatar and you got to walk around. You designed a whole house or something, and you walked around and you played games, and I noticed that like a lot of that has kind of like fallen away. And I don't know if it's like fallen away because we have started meeting in person again. We do have this opportunity to now be in person. But it's interesting to see like what experiments we did in the beginning and what has actually like what has kept going. So you mentioned like Jackbox, Ali. I feel like I learned about. I know it was a thing before the pandemic, but I didn't know about it. And then we started using it, and we still use it today. Are there any other like little other than Zoom and Jackbox? Are there any other like platforms or things that you experimented with?
So in terms of games, we really like as a Pictionary. There's also something called Gartic Phone, which is like the game Telephone, where you sort of try and pass on things and you see how it gets all muddled, but you do it with pictures as well. So, there's a couple things like that, but also in terms of, I guess, behind the scenes, we use Discord as a platform for sort of the Bad Coffee Club members to communicate outside of sessions. And Discord is a really useful platform for organizing groups like this. It's very accessible, and it's very easy to organize yourself and have different channels, and sort of it's easy to online just have a sort of whole mess of talking, which is wonderful, but it allows you to just have a little bit of structure that just really brings forward a lot of really great things. But no, I think that like the coolest thing is that um it you know, although we're moving and we are able to do meetings in person, we're still I don't have any intention of stopping doing the online meetups, and I think that's core to what Bad Coffee Club is. It's really that's really cool because I don't really when we started it, we didn't think about what our goal in 10 years was for Bad Coffee Club, but like it was really it's been really nice to be able to see that this is not just a pandemic thing. Like we are moving and developing and it's changing, but like it's still retaining a lot of its original elements, which I think is really, really nice.
Yeah, it makes this accessible to so many other people that wouldn't have or couldn't have connected in the past. I also loved what you were talking about that formula of like check in and then light games and then the check out allows for a deeper connection, allows for people to like share deeper things. And each, I'm imagining like if you meet regularly, that it gets deeper, right, as you go. And I love that. I love that because that formula is also universal. It works. It works in the United States. It work. We do the same. We have the same structure. And yeah, I love seeing that it works everywhere. So I guess I did what I also didn't clarify was you are both young adults. You're both in university, right? Or I thought, I don't know, did I read that in the but you're young adults over 18.
So, yes, I'm
Yeah.
over 18. I'm 20 at the moment.
Okay.
I'm in uni right now. So I was, I think, just under 18 when Bad Coffee
Okay.
Club started, from what I remember. Yeah.
So what is the age range for your two groups?
It's a good question. I feel like I don't know people's ages. We've got a mix of people. I feel like Gav, would you like to answer this? Because I'm struggling to
Happy to
remember.
help. So certainly in the case of Bad Coffee Club, they range presently from 17 to 20. But as Ali said, obviously they were a bit younger whenever they started or brought the provision into being. And I think it's probably better if Zac maybe speaks on behalf of #Blessed.
Yeah, I think I'm not 100% sure because it started a few years ago. A few of the members would have been in their teens, So at the moment, it goes from about 18, I think the youngest members are, up to about 26 because I'm the oldest one. And yeah, I think there's one or two other people who've joined who are a bit on the higher range, like me. But because it's kind of the way it's formed around the one congregation initially, it's kind of moved up. It's not as soon as you reach a certain age they're going to kick you out, So it's yeah, widening a little.
That's actually a great segue to what I mentioned earlier in the whole bridging conundrum, which we have in the United States, and I don't know if you have there. So in the United States, in our congregations and even in our like national events and things, we have a pretty hard like segregation of people who are in high school. So they could be 18 up to 19, but usually they're somewhere under that. And then what we call emerging adults, who are that that age that has left high school, and they could be in university, they could be working, but that 20 or 19 to 24 kind of era. And then we have young adults, which really covers anything, but it could cover all the way up to 35. So we have this like because we kind of segregate's probably not a great word to be using in this case, but because we separate the high schoolers from the young adults in most settings, there is this bridge, right, that happens when you leave being a high schooler and you become a young adult. And we talk a lot in the United States about this bridge and how we often kind of lose people when they become young adults because there's a lot of support for youth in the form of youth groups, and there's a lot of adult support that's kind of like helping them get places and making sure that they have the funds to do things. And then they move into young adulthood where we're like, well, you're adults now. And so you should just all of a sudden do all of these things on your own, right? And we don't know how to support you because the support doesn't look the same, right? Like I'm not gonna treat my 23-year-old child the same as I treat my 17-year-old child. So it looks different. And so there is kind of it's hard to do that bridge. What is it like there?
That's such a good question, and it depends on the context. I think I'll probably I'll let Gav elaborate, but we have bridging in some of our places as well. I think particularly on the sort of residentials, that was like a big thing, is that I can no longer go to those because I have passed 18, and for good reason. That's very reasonable. I'm not saying it's unreasonable, but as you said, it leaves this sort of gap, which is quite hard to sort of move through. And you're suddenly losing all this connection, and that's part of what Bad Coffee Club was for, really. And I know, and there was a lot of us who had just started bridging and were sort of moving out, and we were organizing to try and meet up during the summer and that sort of thing. But then COVID happened, and it was at this point which me and other people were starting to think, oh, actually, let's see if we can do something online. But yeah, we have bridging as well, actually, and at the Hucklow the Nightingale Centre, they call it troughing, because they have this like there's like a spring water trough that you get water poured over you if you're going in, obviously only if you'd like to, if you're starting or leaving, and then the hardcore people get in the trough completely, and it's a ton of fun. Everyone gets messy, and it's like a sort of nice physical thing of signifying that transience. But yeah,
that's beautiful.
It is a great question. Even outside of the Unitarian bubble, and we imagine outside of faith groups in general, those transitional moments are tricky ones to navigate. I think I'm incredibly optimistic. Again, not to milk the point, but tech, I think, has huge opportunities here in terms of the opportunity for those that are going between one group or one stage to another, to actually create online space to be able to be navigated well, but also to create a new space so that they can then at least have a meeting point from which they can then go on to do whatever it is they wish to do. I also think the tech has been really, really useful in terms of, in a way that that was just unimaginable beforehand. We can now, as youth leaders, as youth coordinators, youth facilitators, however understood in various different contexts, we can now work one-to-one and in small groups with those individuals or those small communities who want to go on and continue to do or be part of a community or grow a community in some way. So, for instance, only yesterday, I was meeting. Sorry, not yesterday, the day before. I met with Amy, who's a member of Bad Coffee Club, and we sat down and we went through what the role of a treasurer is, because they are taking on the role of leading on creating a youth residential, which is being planned and organized by the participants themselves. And we can now do that kind of training on a one-to-one basis or on a small group basis online in a way which we just couldn't have done beforehand. So we can use the tech to skill up and equip and enable, and of course give that shot in the arm in terms of confidence in a way which we couldn't have done beforehand. And again, we can do it regularly, and we can do it consistently in a way we couldn't do before. Huge potential in the tech, huge potential. And the other thing that maybe I think we need to look at, and it's quite a recent thing on my radar, is rather than looking at them transitioning through, but actually just saying, well, here's a cohort, and the cohort just goes through the rest of their life together. So they don't necessarily have to travel through.
Yeah.
one stage to the other. They just stay in the cohort, and the cohort travels as a community. And so we can have multiple models, can't we? Where the generation or that little cohort stays together, and we can equip them through the tech in order for them to develop skills they need to keep going, and of course to grow and to thrive. And of course they'll have great conversations about what that means. And then of course we can still have those additional spaces where they're going through maybe from one stage to another. So again, all facilitated, I think, or can be facilitated really well by the tech. So I don't think it's going to be a magic bullet that's going to fix things. Not by any means. Of course, it depends on capacity and everything else. But whenever you think of the potential of the online space, it doesn't matter, say, for instance, if Zac or Aly goes to work or to college or to university or take up employment in another part of the country while the online space is still there. And as we've seen through, Bad Coffee Club, they're using the online space as a catalyst also to meet in person. So I think that the tech and how we use this new tech, which I think is the printing press of our day. This is the printing press of our time. And we can use it really, really well to provide these tremendous opportunities which help with bridging and so many other things. So that's where I'm at the moment with it.
I feel like, Gav, I feel like you and we could have some great conversations about
I'd welcome it.
Yes,
I very much welcome it.
We should definitely do that. And I love what you said about a cohort, because I think that it naturally happens. People bond together. They don't, separate out when they bridge or they trough. Is like a verb, like you are troughed. Do you?
It should be. It should be to trough.
No, it is. It definitely is used that way. Yeah.
I love it. I think it's wonderful. I mean, as long as it's all, consensual. That's the most important thing. Sometimes we find that some of the traditions that we have in youth and young adult community was not always consensual. So but consensual troughing, I support it 100%. But I love that idea anyways of, people moving through together and they're already bonded together, they're already friends, and then being able to experience these things, and we can help them with those needs that they have as they age through. I love that idea. Zac, do you have anything to say about what bridging looks like at #blessed? Or
Yeah, I was just thinking how to put it, and then when Gab said about the moving up as a cohort thing, that really, I think, has captured what it is we're doing at the moment. I think it's important for us, I think, not to be a youth group in the sense that, like I said, when you get to a certain age, you're out of it because they don't want you anymore. I think it's a movement we're having where we just are creating a space to empower young people, but you don't necessarily have to be, we've got a member of it who is older because he sort of oversees it from a safeguarding kind of point of view as well. So I think, in terms of bridging, because it's such a new kind of thing, we've not really had the experience of having to move more young people in that are a lot younger than the rest of us, or people transitioning out because they're older. And I don't think that we're necessarily going to have a hard and fast sort of line for that. I think we will move together as a cohort and then just see how we need to adapt it if more young people join, or maybe if they don't, maybe we won't be a youth group anymore. We'll all be in our 40s and 50s and just, carrying on doing what we're doing. So yeah.
I love that. So I'm not sure what our time check is because I didn't pay attention when we started talking. But I'm gonna trust Ted to be able to let us know if we've gone over too long. Ted, for those of you listening, is our fantastic producer who is taking care of all of our technical needs. But I do want to ask you, do you have any mysteries or questions that you have about Unitarian Universalism in the United States and how we roll as well, unfortunately, I don't have a young person here. I wish I had a young person here to answer these questions for you, but from a perspective of an older person, any questions for us?
I feel
Um,
like I've been learning a lot through these, international meetups. And so I don't have anything that's like like some crazy unknowns about the US, the US, or the sort of the Unitarian Universalism movement. And as I said before, I've been part of both, so I feel like I have a bit of a window. But it's so cool hearing from from people all over the world and getting a sense of what that looks like. Yeah.
That's actually a great question. The international meetups, how can people get connected with that? Can people who are listening to or watching our session here, can they get connected with that international meetups?
the answer is an emphatic yes, absolutely. So I suppose we're very much in the trial stage, so we always ask people to be gentle with us. We're learning as we go along. We're learning as we go along, making plenty of mistakes, but also having a lot of fun in the process.
Mhm.
And if people would like to be involved, they would be most welcome. I'm wondering what would be the best way to do that. I'm wondering if, for instance, can we put my email below the blurb that
We can
goes out on
put
this?
your contact
Your little
information
point.
Please.
in the notes.
Yeah, that's all.
Like and
That's down here.
subscribe.
If we could do that, that would be tremendous. And just to give people a flavor of what that is, so we meet monthly. We meet on a Sunday because who would have thought it? It's just culturally a really good time to meet. And we're very much taking an emergent approach. We're being very much led by our participants. So, for instance, we'll normally finish off each gathering by saying what's emerging for you. Our participants will talk about what's emerging for them. And from that, we will then set like the program for the next meetup. So, for instance, at our last meetup, we were talking about movies and how movies have that ability to, to really take us to moments of real joy. They can reveal real epiphanies within us, but also they can just be fun and they can be a release and a useful distraction. So we were talking about movies, and that came from our participants talking about, well, could we explore movies together? At our next meetup, what came up from the what's emerging stage was bucket lists, bucket lists and the role that bucket lists play and the fun that we can have both in composing bucket lists, but also in working our way through them.
Mhm.
So, we try to keep things as lighthearted as we can, as fun as we can. And but it's very much driven by our participants. Our participants more or less set the agenda in terms of what we do each time. But we meet monthly on a Sunday via Zoom,
All right.
as is the way now. People would be more than welcome to join us.
Yes. Okay. So look for Gavin's contact information in the show notes of this show. Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us, for waiting for me because I was late. I appreciate you so much being patient. And I hope that I hope that maybe we can have you back on again when Eric is with us, because I think that Eric would have loved to have had this conversation with y'all. And that we can keep up these conversations internationally, as Eric would say, across the pond.
Yeah.
Keep saying that. I'm like, I don't know if that's what we say anymore, but that's an Eric thing. All right. So for those of you listening, thank you for joining us. Our next Just Breathe Live is going to be with Melanie Davis and special guests who are going to join us to discuss sexuality education and youth and emerging adults. So what's new, what's not, and how might we fight back against the growing tides of disinformation and anti-inclusive legislation, dropping the last week of November. Be sure to like and subscribe to this page. Follow us on Instagram, Just Breathe Live, and spread the word. Thank you, everyone. Oh, wait, there's one last thing. There's a tradition that we have here on Just Breathe Live, and it's the whoosh. The whoosh means that we're done. It's like the final movement of like, we've finished, we are like exhaling, because it is called Just Breathe Live. We're exhaling and we are finished. So I will teach you all the whoosh. Is that okay with you? I teach you the whoosh? Okay. So the whoosh, it starts up here and it's basically the sound of whoosh, but we're going to do it like in a really like breathy kind of thing where it like comes up here and we push it all the way out like that, right? Okay. So 1, 2, 3, whoosh.
Whoosh.
Excellent. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You.